Good morning, everyone. This is Tim Stewart, and we're here today to talk about driving, um, well, optimizing the workforce productivity out on the shop floor. And I'm joined today by Joel Scheider and Bruce Everhart from Task Trainers, my primary partner in training and work instruction optimization for my customers. As a quick procedural note, if you have questions during the presentation, please enter them into the Q&A on Zoom. I will get to them at the end of the webinar. Thank you. The agenda for today is the following. I'll give a quick walkthrough of some key success factors for workforce optimization, along with some of the tools that can be used in the smart factory. Then Joel and Bruce will join me for the rest of the webinar to discuss how we can help our customers achieve that long-term success. So the future of work is transforming. We're all faced with kind of embracing new reality, demands more support and workforce flexibility and skills. The workers have to be multi-skilled, agile, and basically continuously upskilling. And meeting these challenges is significantly easier with digital technology solutions to empower the workforce with information they need to do their jobs. Even in the face of a retiring workforce, increasing product complexity and the immediacy of customer demands. A great example of some of the technology that can be helpful here is augmented reality capabilities shown in the picture. Both new and experienced workers can benefit from the highly visual work instructions to perform their tasks. But technology on its own isn't the answer. Lean manufacturing has a saying along the lines of automating a bad process just makes the bad results happen faster. Prior to deploying technology as seen in the picture, it makes most sense to take the time to optimize the work instructions before deploying them in this fashion. So frontline workers need knowledge too in order to do their work. But rather than electronic files and video calls, it traditionally comes in the form of paper documentation, training classes, over-the-shoulder mentoring, and face-to-face troubleshooting. A lot of the companies I work with, their method of training is go stand next to that guy for an hour, and then you should be able to do it on your own. These methods don't work really well in the best of circumstances, but they've been seriously impaired in the era of many people working from home, travel bans, social distancing, all of those wonderful things. On top of that, the persistent skills gap is something that our customers continue to grapple with because of retirements and everything else that I'll talk about in a second. But inefficient work instructions and lack of training can have some serious consequences out on the shop floor. It can impact the effectiveness and the productivity of the workforce, can pose safety, compliance, and liability risks. You can lead to scrap and rework and other quality issues. Customer satisfaction can be hit because of those quality issues as well as lack of delivery. And then, just from a simple reliability point of view, the process can be impacted from that way as well. So why is this a focus right now at this point in time? Even before COVID, there was a looming mass retirement in manufacturing across operators, support staff, and management. That problem has only become worse over the past 2 years. There's a pressing and immediate need for most companies to capture the expertise of their experienced workforce before they walk out the door. This is an area where technology can provide a significant boost. When current work instructions are captured through an interview process or by somebody watching the process being performed, it really takes the experience and the expertise of people like Joel and Bruce to avoid the trap of capturing the way that the work is supposed to be done instead of the way it actually happens. But by wearing the smart glasses and recording the work for multiple shifts, operators can easily capture the steps in the current process across time to capture the nuance and the different variations of how that work is performed. The other area where technology can provide an assist is during the training and deployment of training and the new work instructions. As you prepare to bring a new generation of employees on board, you may want to change how training is done to appeal to that new generation. New worker retention is a significant issue for many companies that I work with. By utilizing technology such as augmented reality or AR during the onboarding process, those millennial and Gen Z workers are much more likely to be engaged and perceive the company as a better place to work. Increasing complexity of the process and the products is also a significant challenge for many companies. As the equipment in the plant and the products being produced become enhanced with more and more intelligent capabilities, the workforce needs to keep up. Not only do the work instructions need to be updated to account for this increasing complexity, the workforce itself needs to be upskilled and more comfortable with the new technologies that will continue to come to the shop floor with increasing pace over the next 5 to 10 years. And finally, there's a focus on this right now because there really are many new tools available within the smart manufacturing umbrella that companies can use to increase the efficiency and agility within their operations. But companies aren't going to receive the value from those new solutions unless the workforce is capable of using them and those tools become incorporated into the standard work on the shop floor. Here's just a sampling of some of the new tools available today and how they can interact with training and work instructions. From an augmented reality point of view, the delivery of the work instructions, help with inspection, being able to support the training itself, and remote support from engineering or anybody else for that worker out on the shop floor. From an IoT perspective or the industrial Internet of Things, being able to track the deviations from the standards in real time and being able to reinforce or create a feedback loop to the operators to let them know when those variations have occurred and what they need to do to get back on track. Being able to do the performance analysis and identify how to actually perform the optimization and so forth. From a machine learning perspective, being able to do augmented analysis and decision support for the workers on the line, and then automating things where possible, for instance, with vision systems, being able to take on a lot of the inspection tasks. And then from a workplace ergonomic perspective, there's a lot of automation and robotics with cobots and even microbots to assist with different tasks on the line, and a lot more. So how can we best improve the productivity of the workforce, taking into account everything we've discussed so far? There's 3 main steps, which we'll break down further on the following slides. The first one is optimizing the work processes. The second one is training the workforce. And the third one is executing the new instructions during production. So how do we go about optimizing the work processes? Well, the first step is to document the current process. As alluded to earlier, this is more complex than just asking the operator what he does or having engineering list out the work steps, what the work steps should be. When asked, people often forget details or they say the way that they think things should be done. When observing the process, people will often behave differently than normal if they know they're being watched. So you might not catch all the exceptions to the way that things are supposed to be done when variation does occur within the process if you're only watching it for a short amount of time. So there are a couple of things that work though. First, I really recommend hiring a firm like Task Trainers, or just hire Task Trainers, to help with that documentation. They have years of experience and a very thorough process for documenting the as-is process, and then conducting a task analysis to be very thorough and making sure to capture all of the nuance. They will also be sure to get everyone that touches the process involved to be able to capture everything that needs to be known. Then they also help with working through the current steps to identify waste in the current process and help to find ways to eliminate or mitigate that waste. And then finally, the last step here is to standardize those new work instructions and make them available for training and for display at the work centers. The next step is the training itself. There's more to the training materials than just the list of work instructions. The training materials need to be developed such that anyone giving them or receiving the training can do so consistently and effectively. Thought should be given to the expertise or experience level of the person receiving the training. How should it be done for brand new workers with little experience on the shop floor? Is that the same way that you want to train experienced operators that are simply new to that process? Or even an operator that has run that particular process for a while, but needs to be requalified from time to time or just continually evolve how well he can perform that task. And finally, this is a place where those AR and VR solutions, augmented and virtual reality, can significantly enhance the training experience. Many companies are using these solutions to be able to train workers on the task without actually having to take that machine out of production or slowing it down with a new worker while performing the training. So that's an opportunity to save money while you're doing all of these tasks. Finally, thought needs to be given to how to augment the workforce while they're actually executing the new process in production. Training should be treated as a quality process. It shouldn't be a one-time thing to get past, put a check mark in the box and move on. It should be an ongoing process of continuous improvement. Think about how to evolve the skills of the worker over time. All of the stakeholders in the process should be on the same page with the new work instructions. And that's the point of getting everybody involved up front, is so you can have them on the same page. If the people in the choir are singing from different hymnals, the resulting music's going to be horrible. Having the same hymnal is a really good thing. The AR capabilities can help ensure that the new work instructions are as vivid as possible for the people in production. If AR can't be used, then put interactive displays on the shop floor to assist the workers that have that dynamic display of the instructions, especially in dynamic environments where each piece coming through the station is going to be a different build. And finally, collect data to rapidly identify when deviations from the new process happen. And don't use this to beat people up. Use the deviations as an opportunity to find out what caused the variance, or an opportunity to reinforce the training and continuously improve the performance within that operation. So with all that said, it's time to welcome in Joel and Bruce. Guys, if you could give a quick introduction of yourselves and information about task trainers, that would be great.
Okay, well, I'll start. I'm Joel Scheider. I'm the owner of Task Trainers. We started the company back in the late 80s. I come out of a background in vocational and technical education and have been helping different businesses and industries develop performance-based training systems ever since.
And I'm Bruce Everhart, Vice President of Task Trainers for Operations. Come out of an instructional design background in education with experience in the nuclear power industry, in the manufacturing of various heavy equipment, rail car manufacturing, telecommunications, switchgear, and so forth.
Excellent. So at Task Trainers, what really makes your process stand out?
Well, I think the process that we use involves people at all levels from the very beginning of the process. We like to establish three different groups really that we work with. One is kind of a steering committee that's made up of management people who are making decisions about how the training system is going to be structured and implemented. Another group is what we would call the design group, and that's made up of subject matter experts who join us for different periods of time as we develop training materials and job support documents. And the third group are what we call DACM panels, or small group groups of people from a production area that come together with us for a short period of time to allow us to brainstorm and identify all of the job tasks that are performed in a production area, and then build a matrix that shows how that work is done across different workers who may at times have to work together to complete a task.
Excellent. So in working with you guys, one of the things that really stands out to me is taking the time to optimize the work procedures. So it's not simply a process of documenting the current procedures and then training on how things are done today. I talk about paving the cowpaths. There's, some of the older cities in the country, Boston, for example, the roads kind of lined all over the place because they basically took the existing paths that the cows had created in the pastures and just paved them over and created those winding roads. Whereas in cities where they took a actual planning approach to it, they created new roads and new paths based on how they wanted the traffic to flow from a very intentional point of view. So with you guys, I see it as not just paving the cowpath of just training people on how the work is done today, but actually taking the time to analyze that and optimize it. Could you talk a little bit more about how you do that?
Well, when we work with the workforce and the subject matter experts, it's important to spend the time with the workers who do the jobs and really look at all the different factors that come into their work performance and question them as we break down a task that they perform to make sure we're identifying all the decision points and the subconscious decisions they may be making as they're performing a task. For instance, if you're talking with somebody that's handling sheet metal work and they're telling you, this is what I do, and I pick this up and I put this here and screw it down, to them, that's all they're doing. And they're overlooking perhaps the fact that, oh, hey, there's safety equipment. They're putting on leather gloves to handle the sheet metal. They're wearing eye protection. They've got steel-toed shoes on. That's all part of performing that task, though. But they never think of it because it's just ingrained in them that they do that. And it's our job as more or less the objective observers to say, well, I see this happening or that happening, or ask them the questions that pop into our minds because we don't make the same assumptions they're making. So we ask about, how did you make this decision, or why you go from this step to that step? It seemed like there was something in between that should have been explained.
Yeah, and you shared this piece of content with me in terms of the task analysis components and being able to look at the different steps and related knowledge and safety and standards and everything else that is associated with that breakdown for each and every step in the process, right?
Absolutely. So as you go through this process, you're not only getting people to build consensus around how a procedure is performed, but you're also looking at all of the foundational information that people have to make sound decisions. So is there some basic math that people have to be able to understand and perform as part of doing a task? Do they understand not only what and how they're doing something, but why they're doing it, why it's important? So the theory of operation, just the different tools and equipment they use, are they comfortable with it? Do they feel like they have mastered how to use that piece of equipment so they are in a position to really focus on performing the task without having to spend a great deal of time thinking about how they're going to interact with the system that they're working with. So all of those things have to be considered when you're doing the analysis. And the idea is to help people come to consensus on how to do things and have process engineering and others to look at that and identify if they think there are places that efficiencies can be put in place or obvious errors in the way the workforce is performing the tasks, so that can be built into the training. But central to all of this is not only building in the quality component, but also allowing the workforce to develop ownership of the end product so that they accept it and actually use it to drive training to improve performance.
Let's talk about that a little bit more. One of the things that we've talked about that really drives success for your customers is getting involvement from everybody on the floor and getting the perspective of all the different stakeholders. Can you talk a little bit more about how you get them involved in the process as you go through the analysis and documentation?
Sure. I think it all goes back to beginning with that small group of workers that we work with for a couple of days to do the structured group interview to identify all the job tasks that are performed. Because some of those people may only be with us for a short period of time, but they have a sense of where we're going from the very beginning. It's very easy then to take materials out to them as part of the review process. It generates a lot of conversation within the workforce, and it creates a natural ebb and flow to have others in support groups look at the materials that are being developed and the procedures that are being documented, and it gives you the opportunity to build improvements into the process.
Okay. When you're working with a company that has multiple shifts or has job rotations where multiple people are touching that process in a given shift, do you try to get all of those people involved, or are you kind of nominating one as kind of the representative worker?
Well, we prefer to work with one individual during the course of our work in developing the materials, the task analysis, and the whole process surrounding coming up with training programs. We involve the whole shift. We work with encourage as we develop them and go out to the rest of the workforce and kind of spread the news, ask for input, feedback, and bring it back into the work environment so we can consider all the different possibilities. Because frequently you may have somebody who is an expert worker, but that does not mean they have seen everything or think of everything. And so by involving these other people in the work shift who may be more experienced, or they say, well, this person wasn't able to work with you directly, but their feedback was captured and brought back to you. So you are able to, that person's raised a situation that we need to look at, we need to consider, we need to reach out perhaps to the safety department, engineering department, and touch base with them and bring in some other perspectives to put this all into the best possible package that we can create.
And I think if I go back and talk about that front end job analysis, if you look at organizations that may be organized where they have work cells working in work teams in a production department, or like in a paper mill where you have a line of progression, a crew of people that operate a paper machine or some other systems in the process, if you can build a panel that represents all the jobs in that work area and also pull from across different shifts, then when you do that work, you're pulling together representation that hopefully will be able to bring into account variances in, culture from shift to shift, which sometimes occurs. Things on day shift are different than things on night shift, just in terms of the operating culture. So we want to have people involved from across those shifts and things at the beginning, so that when we go back to them again, there's ownership and there's a sense of the direction that we're going.
One of the objections that I hear from customers when talk about optimizing the work instructions and so forth is, we already have that. We've already got documentation of the process. We just need help training. How do you help your customers understand the difference sometimes between what's really happening and what they have from a current documentation point of view?
Well, just because you have something documented does not mean that people are using it. So I suppose that's where people are saying we just need help with the training. But I think it goes back to getting people involved from the very beginning and having ownership and an understanding of what you're trying to do. You can either do something for them or you can do something with them. Doing something with them builds understanding, appreciation, and belief as you move through the process.
We also look at the process as not necessarily that we are coming in to totally revise their work instruction or work standard operating procedures, but rather we are there to develop training materials. But as we do that, we are also looking at their work documentation, their technical references and procedures, and saying, well, here are places that there are deviations or that revisions are needed. Commonly, if we are working with an organization that has something akin to an ISO certification as to their work process, well, that's great. That means you are committed to reviewing those procedures, upgrading those procedures on a regular basis, and they guide your work process. However, when we look at those procedures against what is actually being done in the workplace, we have an obligation to point out to the client that, yes, you have these processes in place, but that's not really the way you're doing business. And you need to make a decision. We are able to work on rewriting procedures for you, but if that isn't what you want us to focus on, we'll leave it to you to handle on your own. We're just here to tell you this is out of sync with what you say you do. What you're actually doing is different.
Okay. We just have a couple minutes left before 10:30 here. So do you have any kind of final thoughts that you want to get out to everybody?
Well, I just think that a lot of the technology that you can bring to collecting good production data to improvements in operations, and the technology that you have available to enhance training and make even more effective, is really great and powerful, but you need to make sure that you have, again, involved people in the process as you build the training tools and job support documents, and made sure that everybody has come to consensus and an understanding of how work is to be done.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for joining me today. And as we move forward, I've got some great upcoming webinars for the audience here, and be sure to go to my website and register for those today. And I want to thank everybody for attending. And if you want to reach out to me, my contact information is there. If you want to reach out to Joel or Bruce, their emails are there on the screen as well. So with that, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Joel and Bruce, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.